Aide from South Central. Others call me the czar of common sense, but you can call me Larry Elder. And you're invited to join me tonight, starting at 7, right here on AM 560, The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. And, I got to go back to this. I know we played this last week and had a conversation about it. I think this was the day that you were off.
I've been off so many days, but try pick any day in July. Maybe I was here. Maybe I was in a foreign country.
You were battling that bad case of Harvey Fierstein that you had.
Oh, that's right.
But this is this guy who's organizing Cal Exit. California leaving the United States of America.
Marca.
He was on with Tucker Carlson, and he's explaining why the good news in California is that middle-income families are leaving.
It's basically the economy of Mexico. You've got a small number of rich people, the tech people, and you've got a ton of poor people, and the middle class is leaving. Like, that's a recipe for instability. You're aware of that, right?
In regards to middle class leaving, that's actually a good thing. We need these spots opened up for the new wave of immigrants to come up. It's what we do. We're exporting our middle class to the United States. You guys should be thanking us for that. Not only that, when our middle class does move out to Texas and to Colorado, they're taking our values out to the United States and to Texas. So if you look at Texas, in fact, all the major cities that Californians are going to, they are turning blue. And soon enough, Texas will be a blue state.
Despite Mr. Singham's economic illiteracy, I mean, he does have a couple of points there. One, that the states that are receiving productive middle-income families are happy to receive them. Number two, there is some, infection of California liberals when they move out of state, but it's not really what he thinks. I mean, it's people that are fleeing because they don't agree and can't afford what is being imposed upon them. It's very much the same thing in Illinois. And, of course, maybe that's Tiny Dancer's strategy, is also to get middle-income families out of Chicago to make room for the next, as Singham says, because, of course, he is under the misunderstanding that economics is a zero-sum game. For more on this topic, though, because it is so important, and it's also important in the context of what middle-income families are doing to themselves. The story out yesterday, highest credit card debt levels in history, north of $1 trillion in total credit card debt, and very few Americans with much in the way of retirement savings. Even only about a third of Americans have 401k-style retirement plans that they're paying into.
Just a third?
And so it's these are tumultuous times, and an interview that our next guest, Jimmy Pethokoukis, did with a European economist makes them even a little bit more filled with trepidation. We'll discuss that with him. James Pethokoukis, he is CNBC contributor and columnist for the American Enterprise Institute. Jim, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
You're speaking to an escapee from California.
Oh, really?
Where did you? I'm
originally from Chicago, but I did spend some time in California with my family, and I actually left that state knowing that it was terrible. It was terrible for middle class families. I couldn't imagine buying a house anywhere near where I work. So I forget it. I'm skedaddling out of there, and I think that is the fact that people are leaving is not a good thing. It shows that you have a very high tax state, a state where in a lot of areas you really can't build. Raising up housing prices. That's kind of a terrible mix. And I think when people are moving to places where you have lower taxes, where you can find affordable housing, and that remains a pretty good recipe for economic growth.
So you didn't take so-called California values to your destination?
I like the beach.
Yeah.
That's a good value.
Yeah, that's a good value.
I hope to spread that philosophy that going to the beach is pretty cool.
But are things better for you in Illinois?
Well, he's not in
Illinois.
Illinois.
I'm not in Illinois.
Well,
I was in Illinois for a while. Now I'm in Washington, D.C., living in Virginia. Listen, I would love to go live in probably not L.A. again, but beautiful Northern California. But that's like a huge issue that you cannot live in Northern California and have any kind of home, any kind of decent-sized home. Even if you have a great job with a tech company, it's super hard because you have, kind of these not-my-backyard types. They don't want any development. There's this anti-development thing, which is not only hurting California, but a lot of big cities, making it hard for people to move to the kind of high growth, high productivity cities, and that has a huge economic impact.
Yeah, but you're missing
a lot about taxes and things, but that's a huge issue too.
Yeah, but you're missing what the left is doing for you because of that problem they've created. They're solving it by exacerbating it. You can get into some affordable housing, perhaps.
Dan, you always find the other angle.
You could buy a street and set up a tent.
I'm sure Mrs. Pethokoukis would enjoy some affordable housing. I mean, it's affordable housing. Doesn't that sound great? It's affordable.
Yeah, that's great. I'm not sure what you get with affordable housing. I like affordable housing because because it's inexpensive to build housing because people let you build housing, so there's plentiful housing. That kind of affordable housing is fantastic.
Yeah, well, that's not the government-centric model. But just sticking on middle-income families, though, what about self-inflicted wounds and the story I referenced at the outset about the levels of credit card debt? And boy, if you have a little bit of an economic downturn or wage growth continues to be, it's ticked up a bit, but it continues to be relatively modest, this becomes a real problem, doesn't it?
No, listen, we shouldn't be satisfied with the current levels of economic and income growth, in this country. Listen, a decade passes fast. I mean, we've already, it's been, 2007 is really when the recession started. Home prices, I think, actually peaked in 2006. So it's been more than a decade of this. It's really been a lost decade. We have good jobs. We have good job growth. We're not getting the kind of income growth, and I think to the extent that people are kind of worried about the economy, that they worry about the future. Like, fine, it was a bad recovery. I mean, it was a bad recession. We've had a slow recovery, but is this as good as it's ever going to get? And I think there's reason to think it will get better, which is what I've been writing a lot about lately. But we're obviously not there yet.
Well, do you think President Trump should take credit for, the positive jobs report, the stock market climb? I mean, the Dow notches 9th straight record close. And if you look at your portfolio or your 401k, which I haven't done, and I finally did last weekend, I can't believe how well both are doing. I mean, the stock market and your 401k, well, they're tied together, but still, people should take a look at their statements because the money's going up.
Right. Yeah, right. So the market's up. I think there's, to me, I think that is more a reflection of overall good global growth. If I look at what Trump policies have been in place that would help that, I mean, to me, so the biggest Trump policy has been him axing the Pacific trade deal, which I don't think was good for the economy. Mm-hmm.
Keystone, some rollback of regs.
Doesn't look like we're going to get a big tax cut. Doesn't look like we're going to get the big tax cut. Doesn't look like we're going to get the big infrastructure plan. Doesn't look like we're getting health reform. So if the markets were going up for the anticipation of those things, then that doesn't connect us. Those things aren't happening.
Well, you do. I mean, you do have some things, and I don't know how the macro effects, but I mean, there is a move towards energy independence, a more aggressive move, including the Keystone Pipeline, but also a focus on rolling back some of the administrative state. The kind of the deregulation piece of that is important too, even though it's in its nascent stages.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, I'm all for deregulation, but I'm not sure the deregulation we're getting is necessarily in the areas which are going to necessarily produce tons more new economic growth. Maybe, and is that can we put that on? We'll put that on the plus side. That's great, but I know that there was so much enthusiasm that we're going to get this sort of massive tax reform, which does not seem like that is going to happen. I think we'll get some tax reform because I can't imagine that sort of not happening with Republicans controlling sort of all the levers of government. But I think that's going to be a huge disappointment. And whatever good we do in deregulation, I still worry we're going to offset it with dumb things on trade because that is one thing the president can do sort of on his own without Congress. If nothing is happening in these other places, I think the president may turn to trade. And I think that is a huge risk point for this market and for the economy and for workers.
Well, I'm concerned about this interview that you conducted with European economists, this Frederick Erickson, who's the head of a think tank in Brussels. And it was a very good interview. It's very interesting. You can get it check it out at aei.org under Jim Pethokoukis' column space. But essentially, the argument is that we're not nearly as innovative as we think we are, and they're the prospects of being more innovative in the future aren't as bright as some in Silicon Valley would have you believe, and that's a real concern because there's no growth without innovation.
Right. That is the secret sauce. That if you want higher wages and higher living standards over the long term, you need to have a productive, innovative economy. And I am more optimistic than the economists you're referring to. But we do have this problem where you do have innovation happening, but it seems to be happening in a very small number of companies, and it's not sort of spreading to the rest of the economy. So, I mean, either you can hope that it's just that when you have new, the IT revolution is still fairly young, and companies will figure out how to use big data and artificial intelligence to make themselves more productive and their workers more productive, that it just takes time for that to happen. That's sort of the positive story. I think having a more competitive economy helps that, because if that sort of doesn't happen, then you have an economy where you have a few workers at a few companies doing really well and everybody else not doing so well. And then you do, that is, as you were saying earlier, that is really a recipe for a very politically unstable and tumultuous country.
He is James Pethokoukis, CNBC contributor and columnist for the American Enterprise Institute. Jim, thanks for joining us as always. Appreciate it. And I'll tell you what, because you want to move to Northern California, I don't encourage it, but I'm going to put in a word for you with Arthur Brooks about bumping your salary over at AEI.
AEI West.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Jimmy.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's like a hot